This is the story of a night I wish I could forget. But I can't. And after you hear it, you won't either. This happened a few years ago when I was in college, and I swear to you, every word I'm about to say is true. It was a cold Saturday evening in October. The air had that bite in it, you know? That sharp, still kind of quiet that feels like the world's holding its breath. I was with my best friends, Ethan, Lily, and Marcus. We were at Ethan's house, bored out of our minds. That's when Marcus said the 6 words that still haunt me to this day. Let's go to Black Hollow Cemetery. Now, if you've ever lived near Black Hollow, you know the stories. They say it's cursed. People see figures walking between the graves at night. Sometimes they vanish, sometimes they scream. Some say it's not a cemetery at all, just a trap for the living. But we were young, stupid, and full of fake confidence, so of course, we went. It was past midnight when we reached the cemetery gates. The place was surrounded by dead trees that looked like they'd been burnt black, even though there was no sign of fire. The metal gates stood half open, swinging, just slightly, creaking like they were trying to warn us. Lily hesitated. "We shouldn't be here," she said. But Marcus laughed. "Come on, it's just old stories. Ghosts aren't real." We all stepped inside. The air changed the moment we crossed the gate. It got colder, heavier, like the night itself was pressing down on us. The cemetery was huge, row after row of old cracked tombstones, some so weathered you couldn't read the names anymore. A broken statue of an angel stood in the middle, its wings chipped and face twisted. Ethan pulled out his flashlight. It flickered once, then steadied. "Let's just walk around for a bit, record a video or two and leave. 20 minutes tops." We followed a gravel path lined with graves. Everything was silent. No owls, no wind, just the sound of our footsteps. And then behind us we heard a 5th one. Step, 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 step. We turned around. No one was there. We laughed nervously and kept walking. But then Lily stopped. She stared at one of the graves and whispered, "That headstone. It's new." It was. In the middle of all the crumbling stones, this one was clean, untouched, white as bone. No moss, no cracks, just one word carved into it. "Welcome." Ethan stepped back. "That's not funny," Marcus frowned. "Did one of you do this?" "None of us did." And something about that single word sent a chill down my spine. Why would a gravestone say that? Then the flashlight went out. Total darkness. We froze. From the trees we heard whispering. Not just one voice, many. Male, female, old, young. Whispering all at once, like a crowd was watching us. And then came the sound that I'll never forget. A giggle. A soft, childlike giggle, coming from behind the nearest grave. Ethan turned, his flashlight back on. It flickered and caught something, someone, peeking at us from behind the stone. Pale face, black eyes, a grin that didn't move. The light went out again. Lily screamed. We ran. We didn't care where we were going. We just ran. Branches scratched our faces. Tombstones flew past us. We found an old stone crypt and ducked inside. It smelled of rot and wet dirt. There was a coffin in the center, lid cracked open. "We need to go back to the gate," Ethan said, panting. "We're not going back out there," Lily cried. Then Marcus said, "Where's Lily?" I looked around. She was gone. She had been standing right next to me. We called out her name, but no answer. Ethan pointed the flashlight outside. Nothing but the cold cemetery, still and silent. We stepped outside. That's when we saw it. A trail of footprints, bare feet, leading away from the crypt, across the graves, toward the woods. They were Lily's footprints. But next to hers, There was a second set, larger, deeper, like someone was dragging something heavy. We followed. We should have run. We should have left. But we followed. The trail led us to a part of the cemetery we didn't know existed. The trees grew tighter together. The graves were newer, cleaner. The air was thick, hard to breathe. At the center of it all, there was a house. Yes, a house. In the middle of the cemetery. Small, wooden, with one window lit from inside. Marcus said, "What the hell is that doing here?" We didn't answer. We were too focused on the figure in the window. It was Lily. She was standing there, staring at us. But something was wrong. Her face was blank, her eyes wide, and behind her, a tall, thin man stood in the shadows. He raised one hand and pointed at us, and the light went out. We ran again, not even sure where. Every path led us in circles. Every stone looked the same. Then Ethan tripped. I turned to help him, but Marcus was gone too. Gone. Just like that. I was the only one left. I don't remember how I got out. One second I was running. The next I was outside the gate, gasping for air. The sky just starting to turn gray. I ran straight home and never looked back. The next day, their families called the police. They searched the cemetery for a week. Found nothing. No house, no trail, no Lily, no Marcus. Just one thing, a new gravestone. It was clean, white, and fresh. No moss, no cracks. And on it were 3 names, Lily Carter, Marcus Evans, Ethan Blake, and at the bottom, in tiny letters, "Welcome back." No one ever believed me, but I know what I saw, what we went through. And sometimes when I walk alone at night, I swear I hear that giggle behind me. So take this story for what it is, a warning, a plea. Never go to Black Hollow Cemetery after midnight, because the dead there don't sleep, they wait. And once you enter, they'll never let you leave. This is the story of something I went through. Something I never talk about unless I really trust the person listening. And since you're here, I'm going to tell you. Just promise me one thing. Don't laugh. And don't go there, not even for fun. This happened in the old cemetery at the edge of town. The one people avoid even during the day. Yeah, that cemetery. It started on a cold October evening. I was with my 2 closest friends, Jay and Mira. We were bored, restless, and hungry for something more than just movies and pizza. You know how sometimes the night feels strange, like the air is too still? That was one of those nights. Jay had this stupid idea. "Let's go to the old cemetery," he said with a smirk. I heard weird things happen there after midnight. Mira rolled her eyes but didn't say no. I laughed it off too, pretending I wasn't scared. But something deep inside told me we were making a mistake. Still, we went. We reached the cemetery just before midnight. It was dark, foggy, and absolutely silent. Even the insects weren't making a sound. The iron gate creaked when we pushed it open. It felt like walking into a forgotten world, one that didn't want us there. Jay brought a flashlight, but it kept flickering. Mira lit up her phone, but the screen glitched. I felt the cold seep into my bones. We walked deeper into the cemetery, past crooked tombstones, broken statues, and trees that looked like they were reaching out to grab us. Then Jay said, "Let's split up for a few minutes. If we stay quiet, maybe we'll see a ghost." Mira punched his arm. "Don't be an idiot." But Jay was already walking off to the left, laughing like it was all a game. Mira and I stayed together, heading in the opposite direction. We walked past a giant angel statue with no face. Its head had fallen off and was lying in the dirt like it had been watching people for years. Mira whispered, "This place gives me chills." I agreed, but then we heard something. It was faint at first, like footsteps, but not steady ones. They were dragging, slow, as if someone was pulling one leg behind. Mira grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my heart thumping hard. We turned around. No one. Then we heard it again, but this time closer, much closer. We ran, quietly, but quickly. We called out for Jay, but there was no answer, only silence. Then suddenly, Mira screamed. She pointed at a tombstone. There were fresh fingerprints on it, long, muddy prints, like someone had gripped the stone tightly recently. I touched the print without thinking, and it was wet, still wet. And then Mira gasped. Her phone screen showed something that made my blood run cold. She had taken a photo of the stone without realizing it. But in the photo, there was a figure. Behind the tombstone. Tall, thin, wearing old torn clothes and looking straight at us. We turned around. No one was there. I swear on everything, we didn't even speak. We just ran. We didn't stop until we found Jay sitting on a stone bench, smiling like a fool. "Where were you guys?" he asked. "I saw something. A woman in white standing near that big tree. She didn't move." We told him what happened. He didn't believe us. "You're just messing with me." But Mira showed him the photo. He went silent. That's when we all heard a low moan. It came from behind a tall crypt, like someone crying softly, not in pain, but in sorrow. And we saw it, a woman, pale skin, long black hair, wearing what looked like a hospital gown, dirty and torn. She stood still, eyes locked on us. Jay whispered, "She's the same one I saw." We didn't run this time. We couldn't. It was like our feet were frozen. The woman raised one hand slowly and pointed at us. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out, and then she vanished. Gone. Just like that. We backed away, breathless, heart pounding, and turned to run again. But Mira tripped and fell. Jay helped her up, but she screamed. There were scratches on her arm, deep ones. 3 of them, running from her wrist to her elbow. No blood, just open skin like something invisible had clawed her. That was it. We ran all the way out. Didn't stop until we reached Jay's car. It wouldn't start. We tried 3 times before it finally turned over, and we didn't speak on the ride home. We promised not to talk about it again. But the story didn't end there. A week later, Jay stopped coming to school. I went to his house. His mom said he wasn't sleeping. He kept mumbling in his sleep, saying something about the woman. She said he screamed at night, and then he disappeared. They found his phone near the cemetery gate, but not him. Mira and I were scared out of our minds. I told her we needed to go back to get answers. She said no. She told me she saw that woman in her dreams every night, standing at the foot of her bed. Then Mira stopped answering my texts. Her parents said she'd been admitted to a hospital, something about seeing things, talking to someone who wasn't there. She kept saying the woman wanted to take her away too. Now I'm the only one left. I moved away after that. I've never been back to that town, and I sure as hell never went near that cemetery again. Sometimes at night, I still dream about her, the pale woman with the black hair. She doesn't speak. She just points at me. And every time she gets closer, some say it's just our minds playing tricks on us. But I know what I saw, what we all saw. So if you ever feel like doing something stupid, like walking into an old graveyard for fun, don't. Some places hold pain. Some hold memories. But that cemetery, it holds her. and she doesn't forget. Ever. This is the story of something that happened to my cousin Jack. And once you hear it, you might not sleep easy tonight. He never believed in ghosts. Never. He thought all that was just for movies. But after what happened that night in Willow Creek Cemetery, he changed forever, and so will you. Jack had just moved to a small town called Fairdale. Quiet place, friendly neighbors, and of course, like all old towns, it had a creepy cemetery. Willow Creek Cemetery, old as the town itself. Some graves dated back to the 1700s. Locals avoided it. Not because of ghosts, they said, but because people went in and didn't come out the same. Jack, being Jack, laughed it off. One night, a group of new friends dared him to spend the night there. They'd all been drinking a little, sitting around a bonfire in someone's backyard when the topic came up. "Come on, Jack," said Brian, the loud one. "You say ghosts aren't real? Prove it. Spend one night in the cemetery, alone." Jack smirked. "Easy. I'll take some snacks, a flashlight, and a sleeping bag. I'll even film it." Everyone cheered, except one girl, Megan. She leaned forward and said, "If you go there and hear the bell, don't look around. Just keep your eyes shut." Jack laughed. "What bell?" But Megan didn't answer. She just looked down, her face pale. At midnight, they dropped Jack at the cemetery gate. He had a camera strapped to his chest, a flashlight, and his usual cocky attitude. He walked in. The gate creaked shut behind him. At first it wasn't so bad. The place was quiet, peaceful even. The moonlight lit the crooked rows of tombstones. Trees whispered in the wind. Jack walked around, filming, laughing at how unscary everything was. "See this?" he said to the camera. "This is me, surviving the night. No ghosts, no monsters." Then, something strange happened. As he passed one large cracked tombstone, his flashlight flickered, then died. The camera, still rolling, caught the moment. You can hear him tapping, it trying to turn it back on. Then a noise. Clink, clink, clink. Like metal gently tapping. He turned around. Nothing. Then he heard it again. Clink, clink, clink. But this time, it was louder. Closer. Like it was circling him. He thought it was his friends playing a trick. "Very funny, guys," he said, turning in a circle. "Real. Original." No answer. He pulled out his phone to use its light. Dead. That's when he started to feel it. The cold. Not regular cold. A deep, bone-freezing chill that wrapped around his chest. He could see his breath now, even though it was September, and then he heard it. A bell. A small soft bell ringing in the distance, like the kind you'd hear in an old church, except it was almost sad, slow. Ring, ring. Jack froze. Megan's voice echoed in his head. "If you hear the bell, don't look around." But curiosity won. He turned, and there, about 20 feet away, was a figure. Tall, thin, dressed in old-fashioned black clothes, like something from a century ago. It wore a wide hat, its face hidden. In its hand was a long staff, and at the top of it, a bell. It didn't move. Jack whispered, "Who the hell are you?" No answer. He backed up slowly. Every instinct told him to run, but the figure didn't chase him. It just tilted its head. And then there were more. All around him, standing between the tombstones, were others. Pale, shadowy figures. Some looked like children, some like old men, all staring at him. Jack turned and bolted. He didn't know where he was going, just away. He tripped, fell, scrambled up, and kept running. He didn't stop until he reached a tall stone statue in the middle of the cemetery. An angel, wings wide, arms open. Its face had been chipped away. It was smiling. Behind him, the bell rang again. Ring. Jack screamed, not because he saw anything, but because the sound was right behind him, inches from his ear. He dropped to the ground, curled into a ball, eyes shut tight. He doesn't remember what happened next. All he remembers is waking up outside the cemetery gates at dawn. The sun just rising. The cemetery calm. Normal. His flashlight was in his hand. His phone worked again. But the video file was gone. He walked back to town in silence. When he found his friends, he was pale, shaking. He didn't speak for a whole day. They laughed at first. Thought he was faking. But then Megan saw his face and stopped laughing. "You saw him, didn't you?" she whispered. Jack nodded. After that, Jack was never the same. He moved out of Fairdale 2 weeks later. Doesn't talk about that night. Doesn't go near cemeteries, not even during the day. But there's one thing that's really creepy. A week after Jack left, Brian, the guy who dared him, decided to go into Willow Creek himself. "Let's see what scared tough guy Jack so bad," he said. He never came back. They found his backpack, his phone, and one thing sitting on top of the largest tombstone near the center. A bell. So, if you ever visit Fairdale, and you get the bright idea to explore Willow Creek Cemetery, don't. But if you do, and you hear the bell, don't turn around. Don't open your eyes. Just keep walking. Or you might not walk out at all. This is the story of something that happened to my friend Sarah. A night she'll never forget, and honestly, neither will I after she told me. It's the kind of story that sticks with you and makes you think twice about going anywhere near a cemetery after dark. So listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is real, and it will chill you to the bone. Sarah had always been a little daring. She loved exploring abandoned places and old buildings. One evening, she and two of her friends, Mark and Emily, decided to check out Greystone Cemetery. It was a huge cemetery on the edge of their town, famous for its old graves and creepy legends. Everyone said it was haunted, but Sarah laughed it off. She was the type who didn't scare easily. They planned to meet at 10 p.m. and spend a couple of hours there, just for fun. Sarah brought a flashlight, a camera, and some snacks. Mark and Emily were a bit nervous but went along anyway, partly because they didn't want to be left out. When they arrived, the moon was full and bright, casting long shadows across the cracked gravestones. The cemetery looked peaceful, almost beautiful in the moonlight. But there was something else, an uneasy feeling Sarah couldn't shake. They entered through a rusty iron gate that groaned as it swung open. The air felt colder inside, even though it was a mild night. They walked slowly along the narrow paths between the graves, joking and trying to act brave. "Let's find the oldest grave," Mark suggested, shining his flashlight at the moss-covered stones. "That's always the spookiest." Emily shivered but nodded. "Maybe we'll see a ghost." Sarah smiled. "Yeah, right." They wandered deeper into the cemetery, their flashlight beams bouncing over cracked headstones and twisted tree roots. Then Emily stopped suddenly and pointed to a grave nearby. "Look at this one," she said, voice shaking a little. The tombstone was old and weathered but clean enough to read the name. Margaret Holloway, died 1892. Sarah bent down and noticed something strange. The grave had fresh flowers on it. Who would leave flowers here at this hour? She wondered aloud. Mark shrugged. Maybe someone lives nearby. They didn't think much of it and continued walking. That's when Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. "Great," she muttered, clicking it on and off. "I think the batteries are dying." Suddenly, Emily gasped. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. From the shadows came a faint sound. It was like soft footsteps, slow, dragging, coming closer. But when they looked around, no one was there. Mark laughed nervously. It's probably just an animal, but Sarah's heart was pounding. Let's stick together. They moved toward the gate, but the path seemed longer than before. The trees looked thicker, the shadows deeper. It was like the cemetery was changing around them. Then they saw it, a figure standing in the distance. It was a woman, dressed in a long white gown, her hair flowing and face hidden in the darkness. She was just standing there, motionless, watching. Them! Do you see that? Emily said, voice trembling. Mark took a step forward. Hello? Are you okay? The woman didn't answer. Suddenly, she raised one arm and pointed to the ground. Sarah shone her flashlight down and saw a freshly dug hole, wide and deep. Guys, I don't like this, Emily whispered, grabbing Sarah's arm. Before Sarah could reply, the woman vanished. The air grew colder, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to shift. The shadows stretched like fingers, reaching for them. Suddenly, Sarah felt something brush past her, a cold touch on her neck. She spun around, but no one was there. Panic rising, they started running toward the gate, but the path was twisting and confusing, the trees closing in. Every turn seemed to lead them back to the same spot near the grave of Margaret Holloway. Mark was breathing hard. We're lost. Emily was crying softly. We need to get out. Sarah, trying to stay calm, pulled out her phone. No signal. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw something else. Words written on the tombstones, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Messages, warnings. Leave now. Don't dig. The Dead Watch. Sarah grabbed Mark and Emily. We have to keep moving. Suddenly, the ground shook. From the freshly dug hole, a hand burst out. A pale, dirt-covered hand, clawing at the earth. The woman in white appeared again, standing over the grave. This time her face was clear. A pale, sad face with hollow eyes and a mouth twisted in sorrow. Help me, she whispered. Sarah stumbled back, heart racing. The hand was followed by another. Then a body started to rise, a figure wrapped in dirt and roots, eyes empty but full of anger. Mark shouted, "Run!" They sprinted through the tangled paths, the dead rising behind them, the woman's mournful wails echoing in the night. Finally, they burst through the cemetery gate as the sun started to rise. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their homes. Sarah never went back to Greystone Cemetery, and she never spoke of that night, until now. Because sometimes, when the wind howls and the moon is full, she still hears the woman's voice begging for help, and she wonders how many more are buried, waiting to rise. So if you ever find yourself near an old cemetery at night, remember this story. Some graves are better left alone, because once you disturb the dead, you might never leave. The story I promised. The one about a night in the old cemetery that still haunts my friend Ethan. I swear, once you hear this, you'll never look at a graveyard the same way again. This isn't some made-up ghost tale. It's real, and it almost cost Ethan his life. Ethan had always been curious about the supernatural. He loved horror movies, reading stories about haunted places, and exploring abandoned spots. One chilly October evening, he and his two best friends, Rachel and Mike, decided to visit Hollowbrook Cemetery. It was a place on the edge of town, huge, silent, and full of old graves, many dating back over 100 years. Everyone said the cemetery was haunted, but Ethan saw it as the perfect spot for an adventure. They met just before midnight, carrying flashlights, a couple of cameras, and a backpack full of snacks. The air was crisp and cold, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds, making the night feel even darker. As they stepped through the rusty iron gate, a strange silence surrounded them. No wind, no animals, just quiet. Rachel whispered, "This place gives me the creeps." Ethan laughed. "That's why it's perfect. Let's find something spooky." They walked slowly down the narrow paths between the crooked tombstones, their footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. Ethan was filming the whole thing, narrating into his camera with a playful bravado. Suddenly, Mike stopped. "Hey, look at this one." They gathered around a large, weathered gravestone covered in moss. The inscription was barely legible. Jonathan Harker, 1876–1902. "Old guy," Ethan said. "Wonder what happened to him." Rachel bent down and noticed a strange symbol carved into the stone. It looked like an eye surrounded by twisting vines. "Guys, do you think this is some kind of secret sign?" she asked. Mike shrugged, but Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, the air grew colder. Ethan's breath fogged in front of him. Without warning, Rachel screamed. They all turned to see her staring at something behind Ethan. He spun around and caught sight of a dark figure standing between two tombstones, tall, shadowy, no face visible. "Who's there?" Ethan called out, voice shaking. No answer. The figure didn't move, but seemed to watch them. Ethan took a step forward, but Rachel grabbed his arm. "Don't go near it!" The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared. The three friends looked at each other, heartbeats pounding. "We should leave," Mike said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. I want to know what that symbol means." They moved deeper into the cemetery, the silence pressing around them like a heavy blanket. The path seemed to twist and stretch unnaturally. Every few steps, Ethan glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the figure to follow. Then, out of nowhere, the ground beneath them trembled. "Did you feel that?" Rachel asked. Before they could answer, a low growl echoed from the shadows. It was guttural, deep, and close. Suddenly, from behind a broken gravestone, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, staring right at them. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They took off, sprinting blindly through the maze of graves. The growling grew louder, accompanied by heavy footsteps pounding behind them. Rachel tripped and fell, twisting her ankle. Ethan stopped and helped her up. "Come on, we have to keep moving." Mike was already ahead, shouting for them to hurry. They reached the cemetery gate only to find it slammed shut. "Locked!" Mike yelled, pounding on the iron bars. The growling was right behind them now. Desperate, Ethan grabbed a nearby wooden plank and tried to pry the gate open, but it wouldn't budge. Behind them, the red eyes emerged from the darkness. A creature, huge and wild, covered in matted fur with sharp claws and teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. Ethan raised the plank, ready to fight. Suddenly, the creature stopped. A whisper floated through the air, soft but clear. "Leave this place." The creature vanished into the shadows as quickly as it came. The gate creaked open on its own. Without hesitation, the three friends ran out, not stopping until they were safe in the bright lights of town. Days later, Ethan researched the symbol on the gravestone and discovered it was an ancient mark used to ward off evil spirits. Jonathan Harker, the man buried there, had been a guardian of the cemetery, a protector keeping dark forces trapped within the grounds. Ethan never returned to Hollowbrook Cemetery, and sometimes, late at night, he still hears that whisper, warning him to stay away. So if you ever find yourself near an old cemetery, remember Ethan's story. Some places are better left alone, because the dead aren't always at rest, and some guardians never truly sleep.